The New York Yankees 2024 season is off to a fantastic start, and Yankee fans everywhere are loving it. However, as a pessimistic Yankee fan, I still have a bunch of concerns. So, here's basically a summary of my three largest concerns. Let's get to it. Over the majority of the past decade, the Yankees have been in this cycle of adding some factor that they believe makes them World Series favorites, and then coming up just short. The fans are heartbroken. Then they add a new factor, fall just short again, and it keeps on going on and on and on. It's cycling. And a lot of people are saying, this year's different, this year's different. However, I believe that the common denominator to all this underachieving is still there. I believe that the common denominator is Aaron Boone. I wrote an article about this on my website. Go check it out, thepitchsw.com, where I explain exactly what I think he does wrong. But I'm not going to get into that now. I'm going to get into the common denominator aspect of this. You look back at the beginning of the Baby Bombers core, back in 2016, when we had Gary Sanchez and Luis Severino, young guys coming up. We won 84 games that year. And at the end of the year, the feeling was high. The feeling was we won 84 games in a rebuilding year. We have Gary Sanchez, we have Luis Severino, we have a bunch of young prospects. We just scammed the Cubs. We just traded them Chapman for Torres, and then we signed Torres at the end. We signed Chapman at the end of the year. So it was high morale. And then 2017, obviously high morale, rebuilding year. We went all the way to the ALCS, came a game shy of the World Series. And then that offseason, the two big moves the Yankees made were trading for the reigning NL MVP off of a 59 home run season, Giancarlo Stanton, and replacing Joe Girardi with Aaron Boone. And the feeling was, we have Aaron Judge, who just hit 52 home runs this rookie year. We have Giancarlo Stanton, who just hit 59 home runs. We have Tanaka, Severino, we have Torres coming up. We have Gary Sanchez. This core is going to win multiple rings. And, well, I think we all know that didn't happen. And from that point on, from the point that we got Aaron Boone on, you see every time the Yankees added a factor and then disappointed. They added Giancarlo Stanton. It's like, oh yeah, we're for sure going to win a World Series now with Giancarlo Stanton. Hasn't happened. And then they added Garrett Cole. It's like, oh yeah, we're for sure going to win a World Series now with Garrett Cole. Hasn't happened. We added Rizzo and Joey Gallo in the same 24 hours. Oh, for sure we're going to win a World Series now. Hasn't happened. And then before 2023 season, we added Rodon and called up Volpe. We all know how that season went. It hasn't happened. Aaron Boone has been the common denominator when we went from overachieving to underachieving was when we added Aaron Boone. And that common denominator is still on the top step of our dugout. So I wouldn't get too excited. And just some proof that it's just another Aaron Boone year. People are so high on this Yankees team. After 60 games this season, this Yankees team was at 41 wins. Remember 2022 season when we got embarrassed by the Astros? We were at 44 wins after 60 games. And then we lost our gas toward the end. The Yankees barely stuck out that series with Cleveland, and then they got their butts kicked by Houston. It was embarrassing. Everybody was so fed up, and people were asking, is the championship window closing? I easily think that we could get our hopes up. We get too excited here by Soto and Judge and Volpe playing great ball, and then we'll lose our gas toward the end. The season ends in a disappointing fashion, and then Soto walks, Verdugo walks, Torres walks, and all of a sudden we're back to that starting point where it's like, is this championship window closing? So hopefully the Yankees do win their 28th World Series this season. Hopefully I'm wrong. However, Yankee fans, don't count your chickens before they hatch. The second concern is the Juan Soto contract situation. Obviously, Soto's been a major part of this team. The big issue in 2023 was we were too righty heavy, and they were attacking us with right-handed pitchers. We had Verdugo and Soto. Now all of a sudden you got righties on each side of Verdugo, got lefties on each side of Judge. Things have been working very well. However, we know that Soto's contract is up at the end of the season, and he's going to need a massive deal. So the two things that come to mind when discussing Soto's contract is obviously his agent being Scott Boras, and that concerning quote from Steinbrenner a couple weeks ago. So I'm going to start with Boras first. Boras, he's known as the best agent in baseball. His strategy is we're just going to wait it out. Teams will break. Teams will either get desperate because they missed out on the player they were looking for, or they will get desperate because their division rival made a big signing and they feel like they have to match it. Teams will come to us, just wait it out. This strategy worked. He signed a record-breaking deal for A-Rod. He signed a record-breaking deal for Garrett Cole. And then all of a sudden last offseason, things didn't go his way. It felt like the MLB owners almost kind of Colin Kaepernicked him and all are like, yeah, we're fed up with him. We're not letting him drive up the market any higher. Just don't fall for his garbage. And he blew a bag for Matt Chapman, one of the best third basemen in the game. He blew a bag for Jordan Montgomery coming off of a historic postseason. He could have made so much money. However, he signed a mediocre deal with the Arizona Diamondbacks. And his worst case really was Blake Snell. Blake Snell got a 6-year, $150 million offer from the New York Yankees. And Scott Boras said, no, we want more years and more money. And the Yankees said to him, well, we think that your client's a bit inconsistent, a bit injury prone, and has a history of not pitching well in the Bronx. And Scott Boras said, sorry, no, this is our asking price. And then the Yankees just turned around and signed Mike Stroman for 2 years, $38 million, and he's been great so far. Meanwhile, Snell signed only 2 years, $62 million with the Giants. And while the AAV for Snell's contract is bigger than the Yankees offer, he's getting $31 million a year instead of what the Yankees will have offered him. It's not going to matter because over the next 4 years, he has to make $88 million to gain the $150 over 6 years that he would have gotten from the New York Yankees. And what has happened to start his contract with the Giants? He went on the IL, proving that the Yankees' concern was right. He is injury prone. Then he had a very soft start to the season, proving the Yankees' concern that he is inconsistent. And then we went on the IL again, strengthening the Yankees' concern. So as of now, it seems that when his 2-year deal with the Giants is going to be up, it's going to be very hard for me to see him getting more than $10 million a year, maybe a bit more than that. But at the end of this 6-year period that we've been playing with the Yankees, it seems like he's going to end up with somewhere around $100 to $120 million versus the $150 he could have made with the Yankees. Scott Boras blew a bag for Blake Snell. And this upcoming offseason, Scott Boras has a lot of very talented clients, frontlined by Soto and Pete Alonso. And I think that after seeing him get his butt rocked this past offseason, they're not going to have as long of a leash with him. They're not going to be as patient with him. They're not going to let him go all the way into the late stages into December and January. And I think that's what makes him such a great agent. So if he doesn't have that freedom, he's not going to be able to negotiate. So the Yankees actually fell out on a really good year to have to negotiate with Scott Boras and Juan Soto. So the Yankees are ahead of the 8-ball. However, we still don't know. We'll see what happens. The next thing I'm going to address is Steinbrenner's quote. Steinbrenner said that the Yankees can't afford to maintain a over $300 million payroll. And that's a bit silly. He said that they can't afford it. What I think he meant to say is that's not profitable because they're a $9 billion organization. They can afford $300 billion after the luxury tax is between $500 million and $600 million. What I think he meant to say is that's not profitable because they're going to make around $400 million a year and then they're losing $100 million. They can afford to do that for the next 90 years. However, you're losing $100 million a year. You don't want to do that. However, if you look at the way that the roster is currently built, they can sign Soto and they'll be just fine. Because in the immediate future, they're going to be most likely dumping Verdugo's contract, most likely taking Grisham off their book and Torres off their books. And then in the foreseeable future, they can also take Rizzo off their books, LeMahieu off their books, and Trevino off their books. And you can ask, well, if they're taking all these guys off their books, how's their lineup going to look? Well, you have two great outfield prospects coming up in the immediate future in Jason Dominguez, who should be coming up in the next few weeks or months. He's currently in AAA. And then you also have Spencer Jones, who looked incredible in spring training. He looked like left-handed Aaron Judge. So they should be able to patrol the outfield with Juan Soto, who hopefully signs a long-term deal. And then shortstop, if the Yankees handle arbitration properly, should have Volpe locked in for a foreseeable future. Third base, I'd really like to see Oswald Peraza get the everyday job there. Because we saw with Volpe, we saw with Luis Hill, you can't just throw a guy in there one or two times and kind of expect him to figure things out. It takes time. We saw with Volpe, he was horrible to start the year. He couldn't hit water if he fell off a boat to start last season. That chicken parmesan happened, and he was better in the second half of the season. And now, so far this season, he has been a bit streaky, but he's been one of the best contact hitters in baseball. Give the guy some time. And then also with Luis Hill, we saw him come up for a couple starts here and there, and he showed some flashes of potential, but it seemed to us that he's not a guy that we can rely on consistently. And then the moment he got into the everyday rotation, he blew everyone's mind, and he's probably going to win AL Rookie of the Year. So I'd love to give Peraza the everyday job, turn him into that next Volpe. He might not hit so well at the beginning, but then we'll see his chicken parmesan. We'll see his second year. I think he's still going to be a really good third baseman. Paul O'Neill loves his swing, so naturally I also love his swing. I trust Paul O'Neill. So I'd love to see Peraza at the third base spot. Then second base, we have a bunch of up-and-coming infield prospects that can play second base. We'll have to see who it is. They might trade Everson Pereira, who's kind of the odd man out. Might trade him for somebody, a young guy who could play second base. And first base is the most interesting part of how I see the future going for the New York Yankees. I'd love to see Aaron Judge playing first base. And it's not crazy. He's taken practice reps at first base in each of the last 2 spring trainings. And with Rizzo gone, he'd be a great fit for first base. A lengthy guy that's good with the glove would play great first base. It would be great for him because he's starting to get into his 30s. We'd love to preserve his legs. And we've seen him be injured twice in the outfield. We don't need our best hitter running through a wall at Chavez Ravine and breaking his foot. We saw how that dismantled the 2023 season. Put him at first base, protect your best hitter. And then Stanton, whose contract is just going on for the next forever, they're not going to be able to get out of that one. He would clog up the DH spot. So this way you could have both of your young outfield prospects and Spencer Jones and Jason Dominguez in the lineup. You have Soto and Judge in the lineup, and you don't need to pay Anthony Rizzo. I'd love to see Aaron Judge at first base. We'll see how that works out. So if you take Rizzo off the books, LeMahieu off the books, Trevino off the books, because Wells is going to be the catcher for their future. You take Verdugo, Grisham, Torres off the books. That's 6 players. I think that 6-player salary should be able to switch in for a new contract for Juan Soto. My third and final concern, not as big of a concern, is just what is Garrett Cole going to look like when he gets back? Because our rotation has been so good. The standard is so high. And especially after Garrett Cole's amazing 2023 season, the standard for Garrett Cole, the expectations for him to come in and pitch like a 1 ERA. And I'm not sure if that's going to happen. If you look at how crucial spring training has been for pitchers, pitchers who haven't gone full spring training have a track record of being horrible. You look at Carlos Rodon last year. He was a shell of the pitcher he was the previous year, or the shell of the pitcher he is this year. So clearly spring training had a factor on him. Then you look at the 2 Scott Boras guys that we mentioned earlier. Jordan Montgomery took a while to get going. He's still taking a while to get going. He doesn't have a single scoreless outing. And then Blake Snell's an absolute mess. However, I don't think it's crazy to say that Garrett Cole's different breed. He didn't seem to be affected by switching over to the Bronx. He's a different breed. He didn't seem to be affected by losing Spider Attack and his sticky stuff. He's a different breed. And last year, when everything seemed to be going wrong for the New York Yankees, it's almost like they were cursed. He was just above the curse. Garrett Cole's a different breed. And yeah, I think we should prepare ourselves for him to not be incredible right away. But by the time it comes to matter, by the time push comes to shove in September, October, Garrett Cole is going to be Garrett Cole. So yeah, brace yourselves. Might not be perfect right away. But just like Aaron Judge's slow start, don't freak out. He's going to be Garrett Cole, same way Aaron Judge has continued being Aaron Judge. So yeah, that's going to be it for this video. I'm not counting my chickens before they hatch. The Yankees are the Yankees. They might choke. Aaron Boone's Aaron Boone. He'll probably choke. But hopefully, God willing, we see number 28 in the Bronx this October. Have a good one.